those divides. Another area of weakness, here it comes again, is our relationship with, as a network with French Canada, but most specifically with Quebec. You'll notice that there's been no attempt to be bilingual. Our application made it clear that we didn't have the capacity to turn ourselves into a bilingual network at this particular point, but nonetheless it remains a long-distance goal. And the person who has thought more about this, in my experience, than anyone else is Diane Girard, who is a Quebecer, Francophone Quebecer, PhD student, former accountant, I think, or working with accountants in Quebec. And so I've asked Diane just to say very briefly what she might hope for the network with respect to bridging that particular gulf. Thanks, Diane.
Bonjour tout le monde. First of all, I'm glad to hear the word weakness. I prefer it to pretending it doesn't exist, which is a feeling I get sometimes, on both sides, mind you. Sometimes when I'm in Quebec, I sense that Quebec is there, Europe is there, but I don't know where English Canada is. And when I come, because I'm lucky enough to have both languages, when I come over on this side, it's like, yeah, we're all Canadians here, and yeah, but some of them speak French and don't have access. And so this has been my main frustration since I've been working in ethics since 1996. And some familiar faces in the room have probably heard me talk about this over and over again, but I'm going to keep pushing on this. And I think it's important. My main frustration is that I see really interesting things on both sides. And you know, how come when we want inspiration, we go to the States, we go to Europe, can't we kind of see what we're doing together? And that for me is really, really frustration. Just before I talk about the hopes and expectations, because of this divide, because of the silo, I just want to take a few minutes to tell you where are we at in Quebec. And I'm going to be speaking not necessarily business ethics, but more organizational ethics, because that's how it's been developing in Quebec. Maybe because we're a smaller community, and you know, to get together and all that, I don't know. But basically, when I started out as a consultant in 1996, there was very little, and it has been building tremendously in the last 10 years, okay? I would say that we're at a point where we're starting to see an emerging consensus as to what is it to do ethics here? You know, what is ethics in Quebec after all? There was a book that was just published earlier in 2007 where the major players that do intervention in organizations in Quebec, in the Francophone side, where they got together to write about, well, what were the concepts behind what they were doing? What were the ideas? How do they see this working in organizations? Most of the authors are also lecturers or professors in universities, but still. And it was interesting to read the book afterwards and see, wow, you know, 10 years ago we were all speaking about different things, and now we're really seeing this consensus. Part of that is normative ethics. No, I don't know, it doesn't work. I'll talk about that later. I'd like to know why it doesn't work, but it's not really there. Situational ethics, you know, pragmatic. How can we help people in situations make better ethical decisions? That is the real big focus. All the authors in that book will tell you that's where we're going. That's what we care about. Also values, conflicts of values. That's really the core thing, okay? And dialogue. Making the organizations more democratic, being able to talk about the real stuff, as we say, okay? And I would say also, well, ethics in the whole decision-making process and the resolution of those conflicts of values. It all turns around that. And it's kind of curious that, you know, some are more in the dialogue, some are more in the resolving the conflicts of values, but there really is a consensus emerging. There's also been a strengthening, or I would say a structuring of a Quebec ethics network, again around organizational ethics. Okay, so, and the way, and maybe that can help us think of ways we can do this with CBERN, is that we've tried like structuring it, didn't work as well as, okay, let's get some specific projects and let's just work on them. And that has strengthened the network, actually working together instead of talking about how would we work together. Because we did that, and it was just like we have a Centre interuniversitaire en éthique appliquée from the Université de Sherbrooke, but regrouping people from different universities, but it's always the same people there. We can't reach out. There is, however, one project, just to give you an example, our Quebec conference in applied ethics that we hold every year. It's going to be our 10th anniversary this year. Slowly but surely, our idea, Georges Legault and I, who started this, was, okay, we've got this interesting thing. How do we get people to actually work on it? And those that have trouble, you know, getting into the gang, how do we go and get them? Well, now, after 9 years, and yes, it did take us 9 years to get there, most of the major players in Quebec are kind of part of our annual conference. They have their own stuff, but that's one place once a year where we get together. You have people from Université de Sherbrooke, who is our